Thanks, Kai. Hi, I'm James Urbati. I'm a Senior Vice President and the General Manager of Commerce at Pivotry. For the last 20 years, I've worked on e-commerce sites, and for the last 10, I've been focused on enterprise e-commerce clients in the B2B and B2C space. My work here at Pivotry is managing all of the commerce practices, which include supporting products like SAP Commerce, VTEX, Oracle ATG, Magento, Shopify, and ElasticPath. Today, we're going to talk about digital drivers for success for B2B in 2022. And that's going to mostly entail three things that I think are the three drivers for success next year that most of our B2B clients, we found the most success in when they address these things, they get the highest return on an investment. There are a number of things that B2B companies need to consider. And your particular case, maybe you have a supply chain issue or an OMS system that needs to be addressed. But we find that these three things that we're going to talk about today drive success for the majority of our B2B players. And I think these are the things that B2B e-commerce players should be focused on. The first is data. And I can't stress this one enough. Data is the foundation for successful e-commerce. Any digital success B2B companies have is going to start with a foundation of a good, solid control over their data. The companies that we see that become the most successful have a good golden record, single source of truth. They know where the data lives, the data is clean, and that's across their entire organization. So their customer data is very well kept. They have good product information management, which I'll talk about in a second, how that leads to ease of use in a number of other places. They have good digital asset management. They have good control over the resources that their buyers are looking for. And to dig in a little bit deeper on the PIM system, the product information management systems, B2B companies that are successful have good control over their product information, which makes it easier to do things like syndicate that out to other players, other channels. It makes it easier for distributors to use that data. It makes it easier for them to add their product information into marketplaces, third party, share that with distributors, other manufacturers, sell those items on Amazon. Having good product information, having good control over your data is going to make it much easier for you to have a multi-channel engagement with your buyers. The second thing that we think is really important is user experience. And this is a pretty wide swath of things that I think folks need to consider. And we're going to put personalization there as well. But the user experience really is about engaging with your buyer, where they want to be engaged, how they want to be engaged, and giving them the tools that they need to make the buying experience as frictionless as possible. And I think the first thing that you need to consider in the user experience is how granular is the control that you're allowing your buyers to have. Do you have good access control and permissions set up? Is it easy for the account holder of that to add buyers or restrict what catalog they can see, to get different pricing, to limit how much they can spend? Are you making that process, that administrative process, easy? Are you giving the experience the buyer expects? Are you mobile first? As more and more of your buyers interact with you via tablet or mobile devices, is that something that you've baked into the experience for them? Have you built a mobile first kind of experience for your buyer? How personalized is your search? How good is your search on your B2B website? How much information can the user get, can the buyer get from your website? Do you have links to information, case studies, white papers that are easily accessible from the product information pages? Personalization, also goes down to user experience. The typical age of your buyer is probably getting younger and younger. The newer generations are more digitally savvy than previous. With their mobile first, mobile device access, and their expectation that your B2B website is going to look and feel and function very similar to the bleeding edge B2C companies. Have you developed that experience? Is that experience what you're giving to your buyers? And then the last point that I think B2B companies need to be aware of is they need to take a modern approach. And this means more than just adopting new technology, modern technology. And there's a number of things that are currently out in the marketplace, a number of analysts that have described what the modern approach and modern technologies look like. One of those is mock, which is microservice, API first, cloud native, headless e-commerce platforms. There's a company or a group called the Mock Alliance that digs deeper into this. And this is basically the approach to building microservice-based e-commerce platforms. This is the future of commerce. This is what will eventually replace the monoliths that we're used to working with in previous generations. A lot of legacy software e-commerce platforms are monolithic. They're being replaced by microservices. Another way to describe microservices is something Gartner has called composable commerce. And it's really very similar, some distinctions, but very similar in that composable commerce is the collection of mostly best in breed products that give your buyer the best possible experience. And that's doing things like pulling personalization out and maybe using that as a third-party thing, as opposed to that being integrated into the e-commerce platform. Your loyalty program, your CPQ tool, all of those things is separate from the e-commerce monolith, microservice-based. Is composable, as Gardner describes, is very similar to the mock approach. In addition to that, Forrester has something called FIRE, which is their flexible, inexpensive approach to e-commerce. Very similar tenets to that as well. And why that's important is there are e-commerce platforms that are newer. The technology is newer. But if you don't approach the implementation of those commerce platforms differently than you have in the past, if you approach those new technologies the same way you approach monolithic e-commerce platforms, what you'll end up with is some of the limitations that you found while working in those monolithic e-commerce platforms. So it's important that you not only choose a modern technology, like say VTEX, or a modern approach that someone like SAP Commerce has taken to create a headless experience. You're going to want to take a modern approach to those modern tools in order to develop what the end customer experience you want needs to look like. You can also help future-proof this by taking a modern approach. The mock, FIRE, composable commerce, all of these things have several things in common. And one of those is how flexible and easy it is to take out and replace different components of the e-commerce experience. If you are not designing that in a way that makes it easy for you to pull components out, if you design that, build that, architect that, and integrate that the same way you did a legacy monolithic e-commerce platform, you'll find it very difficult to take advantage of some of the modern technology that you may have purchased. And so a modern approach is truly important. So those are the three things that we see as the biggest drivers of B2B success in 2022. You've got to have a good handle on your foundational data. You've got to be constantly aware of what your buyer is expecting from you and making sure that you're giving them the experience, the personalized, deep experience that your buyer wants from your e-commerce platform. And you've got to take a modern approach. It's not enough just to buy new technology. You've got to take a modern approach to how you implement that technology in order to get the most benefit out of it. I hope you've enjoyed this 3 drivers of B2B success in 2022, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.